All right, welcome to the FYD podcast. I'm here today with Jason Mancuso, who is an AI expert, also researcher for Dropout Labs. So before I really dive into Jason's background, Jason is actually one of the bigger reasons why this podcast exists. For lack of better terms, and I've kind of alluded to this before, but I've waited to tell this story for him to be here because I don't know if he knew the impact he had on my life. So earlier, I was part of an initiative in Cleveland called Blockland, which is basically a group of people trying to get blockchain technology moving along in the Cleveland workforce environment. Also bring some startups in here. Since then, there's been a conference. There's been there's some incubators, some other government funded initiatives. It's trucking along. In that effort, there was another guy who I'm friends with, Anthony Hankowski, who's starting a blockchain startup that is Everyone Makes Progress. It's centered around healthcare. He also was doing a podcast actually in these studios. And he had Bernie Moreno on as his first guest, and then he had me on as a second guest, which is, I'm definitely a worse guest than Bernie, but at least I'm there. And so my expertise is really in like cybersecurity and then also like data storage. Those are the two things that my background are really tight in. And but I also wrote a book that touches on how AI, IoT, and blockchain touch cybersecurity. The important note that I would have there is that the depths at which I go into AI is really how it affects cybersecurity, right? And I go over some use cases of artificial intelligent applications for cybersecurity, and then what some people have used neural networks for, pertaining again to cybersecurity. Anthony and I are chatting on this about blockchain. Then we go into this AI tangent, and he pushes me as an AI thing, and I believe the exact quote I said was, "I'm not an expert in AI," which then spurred Jason in the comments on this Facebook live stream saying, "Why don't you have an expert on AI if you're going to talk about AI?" Right? It just and it was a little more than that, but we were just like, man. This is a comment. So I respond to the comment. You're not wrong. Yeah. I'm not this machine learning guru. I'm not an AI guru. Like right. I stayed in my lane for the most part. But what you should do is you should jump on this podcast. Then I think that would be a great benefit. And then I guess that podcast project has since dissipated, which then left an opening in Larry at the Dream Creative Complex's part, who I have then since synced up with and commandeered the studio. And then I was like, well, obviously I need to let Jason talk. So actually, I met him for coffee shortly after that, and we chatted about a couple things, and we know a lot of the same people. And he runs a lot of groups in here in the Cleveland area, and he travels a lot for conferences. He also is the de facto machine learning AI guy as far as anyone that's in Cleveland will tell you. So I'm really excited to have him on. But yeah, this is all because of you. In the grand scheme of things, we have lighting equipment. Like, this looks like a legit place, right? And it's legit, yeah. It's only legit because of you. So thank you. And if you'd like, tell us a little more about yourself in terms of your background and how you came to be in AI and Dropout Labs.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to school around here. I graduated from John Carroll in 2016 with a degree in math. After college, so kind of my last semester, I was getting into, I had taken theoretical math, and that wasn't super applicable in the job market, and I was starting to think, all right, how am I going to get paid and survive? And sure. So I kind of got into some other areas like statistics and computer science. Took a couple classes. One of my professors there, Dr. Elena Manelich at John Carroll, who actually now runs the data science program there. Mm-hmm. She was looking for, or she was going to be doing a project that summer with the Cleveland Clinic around potentially machine learning, data science stuff. It was kind of open-ended, but I asked if I could join.
Sure.
She was like, "Oh, I can't pay you." And I was like, "I don't care,"
Okay.
And so we ended up working that summer on a project with the Cleveland Clinic, and that project was basically, it was at the pathology labs in the Cleveland Clinic, and they they have contaminated blood tests that come through their labs, potentially contaminated either because a nurse accidentally takes an IV from one arm, or takes a sample from one arm where there's an IV in the other, or because someone removes an IV and then within like a couple minutes maybe someone comes along to take blood. So there are various other reasons why it can be contaminated, these blood samples. But then basically they have tens of thousands of these samples come through the lab every day, so way too many for like a doctor to check for contaminations. So we developed an algorithm that could detect them, and the previous best was like it could detect like 80% of contaminated samples at best, which was like, actually no, I think it was in the 60s. And then like the other end, the non-contaminated stuff, it could do like in the 80s. But either way, this algorithm from Harvard, like they had tried this once, and then we tried it with, I guess, a larger data set that the Cleveland Clinic provided, and we were able to get like 99% across the board, which was like a huge step up, and basically showed that the problem could be solved with machine learning.
Sure.
Which was super cool. And that's kind of how I got my taste. And then I went on, worked in finance for like about a year doing risk management stuff.
Okay. Do you work for a bank doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Key Bank.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I got into consulting. I did a lot of stuff around natural language processing. I worked for a consulting company and then did my own for a little while. And then while I was doing that, I was like contributing to open source around this notion of kind of data privacy and how that could affect AI in the sense of data being potentially an asset, right? People are saying like data is the new oil or whatever, right? So,
Sure.
So wondering if we could do machine learning or AI on private data, how would that change the way we do machine learning now? And there's a guy in London, his name's Andrew Trask. He's done a lot of like thought leadership around this idea of it's like open data marketplace where you can train machine learning models. And so he started a open source project called OpenMind, and so I contributed to that for a while. That's how I met up with all the guys who are now Dropout Labs. We met through that project, and so that's kind of what I've been doing in my professiontal life. That's all I got here, I guess.
Yeah. As far as kind of machine learning exists, how do you differentiate machine learning from AI?
Yeah, so AI is a very general term. This is like this anecdote that people say a lot, that as soon as we can do something that we consider to be AI, it's no longer AI. The ballpark, or like I guess the point at which something is AI is always moving. The more we can do, the less we consider to be AI. But really, it's just anything where you have like a human intelligence doing some task, and you want that to be automated, I guess. So that's like a very broad, generic term. Machine learning is much more specific. It's basically learning the task that you care about from data, which means, so this is kind of in opposition to like the kind of the historical ways they did AI with expert systems and rules-based systems, where they would try to program expert rules into a computer and call that AI. But there was no learning from data. It was like translating kind of human intuition into what a computer should be doing to apply it, which wasn't that successful for a lot of different things that machine learning is now successful for.
Sure. And then machine learning versus what deep learning is.
Sure. So if machine learning is learning how to do these tasks from data, deep learning is using a specific kind of class of techniques to do that. And they're based around this notion of a neural network, which is kind of a facsimile or like an approximation of what the brain actually does. So, in the 60s, people were uncovering kind of how neurons worked to create like brain function, right? And at the same time, computer scientists were coming at this from like an algorithmic perspective and trying to like mathematically describe what's going on. There's a lot of like back and forth between neuroscience and machine learning around this time, and that continues today. But I guess the main feature is that these neural networks are basically, they're built on one of those models that people thought might be going on in the brain.
Okay. Yeah.
You have a neuron, it selectively fires sometimes based on what's input to it. This is like kind of the building block that neural networks are made out of. Now deep learning, I think, is a little bit more it's definitely like split off from that. It's not really focused on the neuroscience. It's much more like learning from data. But there's a lot of interesting, I guess, talk about what deep learning is, but I guess that's the core component of it.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that makes AI a frustrating umbrella for all of these things, because if I ask what deep learning is to 40 different people of varying expertise, I'm going to get 40 varying answers.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that any, going back to kind of what my target was for the book, it was AI, blockchain, and IoT, all of which have different definitions depending on who you ask, right? I think AI has the most to unpack. And I think that's because machine learning has literally changed definitions over the years, and deep learning seems to be something that nobody can pin down quite. So I'm going to use your definition for the rest of this podcast.
Oh no, I mean,
yeah, well, I mean it's true though. And as far as like neural networks go, I mean there's really 3 or 4 that are used by the masses. Is that true to say?
Yeah. So I guess basing your definition of deep learning on neural networks is fine. But it's like I did, right?
Yeah.
But it is to some degree masking a little bit of the like nuance or elegance of what I think is interesting about them.
Okay.
There's a piece that this guy Andre Karpathy wrote.
Okay.
Andre Karpathy is the director of AI at Tesla, and he was previously with Stanford and OpenAI, and he did one of the early projects around applying deep learning at Google, which basically
what was his
spawned
name
Google
again?
Brain. Andre Karpathy.
Is it spelled Andre with 2 E's?
No, it's Andre with a J.
With the J at the end? Okay.
Yeah.
I just recently met an Andre that worked at Tesla, so I was like, oh, maybe it's him, but
no.
different guy.
So, yeah, I mean, he wrote a blog post called Software 2.0,
Okay.
basically arguing that that deep learning components were going to replace kind of the standard components of programming languages today. Or maybe not replace, but augment them. So, the fundamental thing that makes neural network, this is getting a little technical, but
No, go for it.
I think that the fundamental thing that makes them work is that so there's a forward pass and a backward pass, meaning I have some data that I want to predict something about. Like let's say it's a blood test and I want to predict whether it's contaminated. I can pass the blood test, or at least the data describing it, through the neural network and get some response, and then based on that response, I have some previous knowledge about this blood test, so I kind of tweak it to say, all right, is this a correct answer? If not, what can I do to change the neural network so that it'll get the answer correct next time I do this? And this is essentially how we train neural networks. It's called, the process by which we do it is called backpropagation. It uses some pretty fundamental concepts from calculus.
Sure.
But it's actually, the math behind it is not incredibly hard to understand if you're willing to kind of take the time and do it. But I guess the bottom line is that you kind of have this forward flow of information and then this backward pass of kind of corrections, and this is known as gradient-based learning or backpropagation or something like this, and it has some kind of relation to concepts of neuroscience. But I guess the point that he was trying to make is that we have these like software, right? Programs are just like kind of these. You can look at them as kind of like data comes in, inputs come in, and it goes through kind of this like long process of doing a bunch of things based on that information.
Yeah.
And we have these like blocks of code that are like, oh, if this, then do this, if that, then do that. What he's, I guess, saying is that we're going to replace parts of those with these like, they call them differentiable modules, which are basically just neural networks, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And if we can replace little pieces of code with these differentiable models, whenever something happens, like we can basically learn the correct behavior that part of code should be doing based on data that we're passing in and then responses that we're getting back.
So then these mini neural networks would be rewriting that software from that point that it comes down.
So they would kind of take the place of like the normal code that we write, and based on feedback, they would be updating themselves to further fine-tune their behavior, like the program's behavior, to whatever its task is.
So everyone that develops software right now is probably going to be unemployed pretty soon.
No. I mean, this is a long-term vision of what he thinks that he definitely places a lot of value on AI, and he thinks that it's going to kind of rewrite the way we do computer science, and this is kind of how he envisions it. Interestingly enough, Google recently hired Chris Latner, who is the developer of LLVM, which is like a compiler that it's a very high performing compiler. He's very well known in the industry, but not in AI, but in computer science in general. And they hired him to work on machine learning. And I think so. They introduced this at TensorFlow Developer Summit a couple of weeks ago. That they're writing a TensorFlow for Swift, which is the language that people use to develop iOS apps. And what they're doing, so I think he developed Swift. But also, I mean, the reason they chose it for a lot of different reasons, but one of the things they're trying to do is essentially do this in Swift. They're trying to make these differentiable models, or differentiability. They're trying to make it kind of like a first-class citizen of that programming language, so that you can replace parts of your code that you would use with normal programming with these kind of modules, and kind of have your programs learn kind of out of the box. Have that be like a fundamental piece of language, instead of kind of having it be something that you use the language to write and then have to kind of manage from there. So it's really interesting. Like, I guess this is like, we jumped like straight into what's this stuff going to look like in 20 years without really looking at like what it is now. But,
yeah. Well, what is your vision of AI now? Because I could tell you mine first, and you could tell me how that's wrong. So mine is purely based on the business applications that I use and see today. So there's a lot of predictive analytics. One thing that I talk to a lot of people specifically on the storage side is, it used to be your hard drive broke and then you had to deal with it. Now it tells you when your hard drive breaks, so you don't have to, there's a little bit of time. Now it says, hey, your hard drive is in the process of failing. Let's do this now, right? So it's AI programs kind of running on the back end. The other application that I use AI in my daily life is sorting data. And I think that using AI to kind of categorize bulk data into buckets, for me, that I wouldn't be able to sift through has been incredibly useful for business productivity, right? But those are really the only two ways I'm really interfacing with AI directly. Now, obviously, there's programs that use AI in the background and whatnot, but as far as what you look at AI in today in terms of its greatest use cases, and how you interface with it too as a researcher.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are two answers. I guess I'll give the answer, like, what do I see of this in a large, like, how is it being applied, and why do I like it, right? Why do I use it? Why do I think it's important? I'd say, like, I give this kind of this like little story or whatever, just to illustrate that, if you're a doctor, you're the best doctor in the world at your discipline. Maybe you are extremely good at identifying and treating some disease. It's very rare specialty. There's only maybe 100 doctors in the world who can do this, and you're the best. You've worked really hard to get there. You get paid a lot of money to do this, but it's because your time is very valuable. You can only ever probably treat maybe 10,000 to 50,000 patients in your lifetime. But if we take the top 10 doctors at this skill and kind of track what they're doing and use them to label data, we can then have 500,000 examples of people doing the best diagnosis of this particular disease, right? And then if we can use that information to bootstrap an AI that can do their behavior for them and do it reliably, an AI is not going to, have a hangover and come in the next day and stuff like that. I mean, I don't imagine doctors do that, but the point is,
I'm sure there are though.
Probably, but there is this notion of human error, and AI is nice because it removes that.
Yeah.
But it's also more so, I think, that we can take human behaviors that we consider to be very valuable and amplify them and kind of distribute them to millions of people in a much shorter time frame. For a doctor would never be able to treat 1 million people throughout his lifetime, but an AI could do that within a day.
Sure.
So this is kind of to me, that's like the big benefit, but also the big risk of AI, is that basically anything we're doing now can be amplified to reach 10x, 100x, 1000x people.
Yeah.
Which can be very good because in the healthcare example,
you're helping people.
Right, and it lowers the price of that healthcare, which is obviously a huge problem in our country now. But Um, Also, you're magnifying the possibility of misdiagnosis, which is like also a problem, right?
I guess that's true as well. Yeah, I didn't think about that as far as healthcare goes, but
But this is like just a
it's across
generic
anything.
example.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
mean, this problem of like providing great benefit, but also introducing an extreme amount of risk, I think is like applicable to basically anything that you want to throw AI at. And honestly, people are throwing AI at everything that we interact with on a daily basis. So,
Sure. Yeah.
so this is like important stuff, right? At least to me, that's kind of my short answer of why it's important.
Well, it definitely is important, and I was just talking before to Rick Earls about IoT, and he's pretty big in the IoT, so with manufacturing, and manufacturing is very slow to adopt any kind of sensors into a lot of their environments, especially a lot of the SMB manufacturers, whereas every company seems very quick to try to implement AI. I definitely don't see the same hesitations. I do see that everyone's using the same, at least from my perspective, everyone seems to be using the same AI. Like Tensorflow is obviously, or Tensor do Tensor, I believe is what it's called, that everyone's using.
TensorFlow.
It's everyone's jumping on. A lot of people use what Google's working on and what Facebook's working on as their basis, which isn't, obviously you want to use standards or something that at least has some level of backflow to. But do you see any possible issues with that using, somebody else's?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. There's a few, I guess, what kind of issues?
Well, I guess, like, what are your hesitations with that? I guess when you're talking to somebody that's implementing any of those, are you ever like, maybe you should do something else? Or are you like, no, use that. That's what's the best thing that's out there right now?
So, I mean, most people can't afford to just jump straight into TensorFlow or PyTorch or whatever.
Sure.
This is like jumping straight into deep learning.
Yep.
Even if they have the data, it's pretty hard to manage a model that you've trained. So, yeah, I think a lot of times people don't have the teams or the stomach to kind of support the things that they want to do. And like it takes a long time of diving into the problem and working with, stakeholders to recognize that, like, they're not prepared for what they've signed up for, kind of. So I think you see a lot of AI initiatives at companies failing for this reason, that, I think they can hire. So there are a number of problems like around this. Like, it's hard for companies to find people who can do this.
Sure.
Once they do, they expect that person to be able to do everything, but really they need a team to support them, right? If you're going to hire a data scientist, you need a data engineer, a DevOps guy, 2 software engineers, and a front end person, just to integrate them with the rest of the organization. Otherwise, they're never going to succeed at what you want them to do.
Okay.
And I think this is not a mindset that people are used to in business. In business, people are kind of, I think, familiar with like the industries they're familiar with, and they can scope out a project, say, all right, how many people do we need? What kind of skills do we need? We're just going to hire those people and do this project. And that seems to work more or less. But with data scientists, like, all right, we're going to hire a data scientist, and they're going to fit into this, and they're going to create this thing, and then we're going to basically use this, and our business manager is going to integrate it into our product.
The business managers can't do that.
It's just like people don't, I think, recognize the amount of, like, hiring a data scientist is like the first 10% of the cost of that project.
Sure.
And I don't think people are really used to accounting for these kinds of projects. So I mean, this is like, I guess my answer to your question is, I don't really see a big problem with people using TensorFlow or PyTorch because honestly, the cycle from getting to someone like me writing an algorithm in TensorFlow to it actually impacting the business bottom line is so long, and most companies don't ever get there. So I'm like, I think that's the larger problem.
Is that companies aren't getting there.
Yeah, and I mean, the ones that do are also still underprepared for like what is, I think, happening, right? Even the biggest companies in the world who are the best at deploying AI are having some very public failures with regard to the systems they're putting into production.
Okay.
So that's a whole set of topics that like that's honestly what I focus on in my research is like kind of the problems with the current way people are doing AI. But that kind of the research I do doesn't touch too much on the human element which I think is like a huge,
It's a huge
a
issue.
huge thing
Yeah.
that people don't really don't always recognize.
So what kind of projects are you seeing businesses implement, whether they're succeeding or not? But like you're seeing a model where they're trying to implement these things and they're not quite getting to the finish line. What are the objectives of those projects?
Sure. It depends on the industry. I mean, so I guess so you have like financial companies who are really trying to make money, right? Who are trying to algorithmic trading is big. I think like at the conferences I go to, there's a lot of hedge funds that are hiring.
Kind of like robo-investor kind of deals, or
yeah, I think so.
like Betterment.
I don't know. The thing is, a lot of the people I talk to don't actually interact with these people. Like they they don't allow you to publish research, and for researchers, that's like a big positive.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so. I guess there's inside tech and then there's outside tech. Outside tech, there's like fintech, there's healthcare, you know, manufacturing,
Yep.
you know, all these different verticals that people would like to apply AI in, but they're like some early adopters, but in general the industries haven't really moved towards it. And and then there's in tech, which is kind of there's a lot of stuff going on there, right? They're like, I mean, they've been for the last 10 years probably really doubling down. I mean, so for deep learning, it's probably been like the past 5 or 6 years for most of them. For kind of applying this kind of technology in general, it's been much longer, probably since the 2000s, I would say. But point being, they've gotten really good at like, I guess, integrating this kind of stuff into their products in a way that drives the metrics they care about. For example, click-through rate and stuff like this.
Sure.
And now they're, I think, branching out and seeing what other kinds of industries can we disrupt by building products in the way that we're used to and applying this technology that we've definitely invested like our futures on. How are we going to do that and bridge kind of they're the only ones who have the talent, I think, and the infrastructure to do this stuff, to like really kind of do it well, at least for now. But I think that is changing as well. There's a lot of like democratization of this information going on.
Sure,
helpful.
Sure. Yeah, and
so
I know that you frequently read white papers because you're constantly distributing them to the various forums that we both are on. So every time I see some of them, I'm like, where do you even find this? But there's like, I didn't even see this. At any rate, which we can dive into that a little bit. But in your research, as you're reading about some of these projects kind of start and fall, are you seeing this coming from like companies that are internal? Like obviously you have big companies like in town we have Progressive Insurance that has a very large facility and has a large set of data scientists, right? Yes. But I also see a model where there's these startups that use AI technology and they kind of position themselves to get purchased by somebody, and then you just have that team that way, right? And you know that they could build that product. What have you seen? Because I've seen both, but I've seen many more startups than a bigger company such as Progressive actually invest in this kind of thing. Yeah, so
I think the big companies are trying to. I think they're just struggling, largely for the reason. I mean, I think there's a gap. There's a lot of people who want to get into this stuff, and there's a lot of companies who want to hire people like that. But when they actually take their requirements sheet to the market, to the job market, the candidates, there's like a disconnect between the skills that they have and the things that they need or think they need.
Sure.
And so a lot of the big companies, they want to do this, but they can't fill out the teams that they need to be able to do it.
What do you think the disconnect is? Do you think the companies think they need something that they don't? Is it like college degrees? Is it, on hand? Because nobody's going to have 10 years in AI, and be an entry-level data scientist.
Well, but I think that's kind of what they're expecting.
Okay.
I think they're expecting kind of everyone to come out with a PhD with 3 to 5 years of experience applying this stuff in the industry, not really realizing that the only people who were applying this particular stuff in the industry 5 years ago were at Google and Facebook, and they have no chance of hiring those people.
Right.
I think there's an anecdote from a friend of mine. He said that his team was trying to hire. He's at a larger company. His team was trying to hire. He was kind of given 150 resumes to go through, right? So clearly there's a lot of people wanting to do
there's
this.
interest.
And he had to go through all those, and at the end of it, he identified 6 people that he saw as a, as a strong computer scientist, six people that he considered qualified. And meanwhile, this recruiter that they've been working with had been doing the same thing, and she came up with a list. 5 of the 6 that he thought were qualified, she had thrown out.
Okay.
Because they don't really know what they're looking for.
What were the things they'd pull people out for? Do you know?
We didn't get too deep.
Yeah. I'd be fascinated to see what that is.
I imagine it's things like
College
not enough
degrees
education or not enough years on the job.
Sure.
I think for people with PhDs with not a lot of experience, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Right.
They can kind of say, oh, these are the kind of problems I've solved with quantitative stuff. They can call it machine learning or whatever, but they have years and years of experience of doing quantitative work in solving business problems with that. But then the things that they're actually hiring for are these modern techniques that have only been around maybe for a few years. And so people who aren't informed about that will look at that 10-year history and say, oh, this person is way qualified. This is the kind of person I want. But then actually the people who are going to be good for the things that they're actually asking for probably only have a year of experience or 2 years of experience. Maybe they probably learned everything they know online, like me.
Right.
And followed some of the classes that people were putting out for free, like from Stanford or Berkeley or wherever. And then and then they were doing projects in their spare time. And so they have a few projects all done in the past year or 2 years. They've gone through those courses, and they're definitely really qualified. They are qualified.
They have. Are they putting their GitHub on their resume and saying,
Absolutely.
"Look at my projects"?
Absolutely.
Because cybersecurity has a very similar problem. Obviously, cybersecurity has at least had more years of being in the mainstream, at least as far as people actually having the ability to have college degrees in it and whatnot. But there's a need for cybersecurity, and there's a lot of people that apply for pen testing positions, and nobody knows how to actually pen test. Is kind of the general sentiment, especially if you're in the Midwest. Because if you're a pen tester that can do a really good job. Not saying that there aren't good pen testers, and I know a lot that are in Cleveland, but they usually go to a coast. I mean, there's the big companies are all there, and one of the first things I think Cisco did for cybersecurity was they said, hey, we're just going to make a bunch of security-based certifications, and CompTIA did one too, but that CompTIA was bought by Cisco, so what Cisco has done for the IT education community, but that saved a lot of people from getting stuck in that college degree mode because. For a minute, it was, well, you don't have computer sciences as your major, you have Latin as a language. And that's right. But you still have you have a CCNA security, or you have a CCNP, or you have something, you know, Security Plus, what have you. AI doesn't really have certifications that I'm aware of. You might be, at least I haven't seen any that are the gold standard of you have,
Yeah. They do have some. I would say that they're not. There's no official. It's very different than obviously cybersecurity.
Right.
Cybersecurity, I think, has a longer history of this.
It's more structured.
Yeah,
and it's more structured from a corporate standpoint.
Exactly.
Like I said,
these certifications are definitely recognized by corporations.
For sure. Yeah. Cisco has done a great job in that, right? And that's not just because I worked at Cisco and drank their Kool-Aid for a number of years, but it you walk around, you're like, oh, you have these certifications. I know what these are.
Yeah.
I can't name an AI certification.
Yeah, honestly, the certifications in AI that I would say are out there that I've looked into are not great. I personally don't think that that's a good way of getting into the industry.
Sure, but then what would be if the hiring recruiters aren't looking for the thing like your GitHub? I imagine a recruiter looks at your body of work on GitHub or whatever, and they say this is what's a neural network, and they throw it away.
It depends. A lot of times, a lot of the recruiters that come to me found me through either GitHub or something like that, or some other project that I've done that I've given a talk about, and they saw it on some social media site, and that was that. But so I think to answer the question, I really do think it's about merit. You're always going to get thrown out by people who don't
understand
who don't understand it, but you're also going to get caught by someone who does.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Some companies are going to some companies are going to recognize this, and And so if you've done the work, if you've if you're capable, and you're able to communicate that through your application materials,
Sure. Yep.
or for example in a letter that you send to someone personally, or through some introduction that someone makes for you, these are all ways I think to get hired in the industry. I think like the need is large enough that if you can do it, you'll be found. It's just it's not an efficient market, but it still does have some
It still does.
efficiencies to
So,
it. Yeah.
obviously, you work remotely. Your company's
Yep.
based out in Canada.
Yep.
I think that for the majority of the work that you do, you can be done remotely. But as far as that goes, do you find that most of the companies aren't in the Midwest? And I don't want to kind of piggy or to quarantine it to Ohio, but like
Sure.
the Midwestern market's very different than the Eastern and Western
Yeah,
markets,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're on the East and West, you have a lot more companies who are looking for this stuff, but also the competition is harder there. Like to get into a company out there, it's everyone in San Francisco is trying to do AI, or I mean,
Sure.
maybe not everyone, but
Enough of them.
there's a lot of people
Yeah.
trying to do AI there.
Right.
There's a lot of people hiring for it there. So I mean, the market there is probably, I guess, more efficient than it would be here or even on the East Coast. But yeah, I think I see that happen. So I think in the Midwest we have like a few different problems here. One, like we need people who know this stuff, and there's actually not like many. Although we're working on it.
Right.
Definitely, and there are like, especially recently, there's been a lot of good talk, like you said in the forums the Cleveland Tech Slack channel. We have some good conversations there. You can definitely see that it's moving in the right direction. And then the other side of that coin is that the companies who are hiring for it kind of need to adjust the way they hire. I think for this kind of thing, like I don't think it's appropriate anymore to have a list of requirements that you pulled from someone else's job description, or I mean, like I guess I just have kind of a bone to pick with the things that I see these companies asking for, which is they pick a few technologies and say like this is a checklist of the things I need. We want a master's degree or PhD. We want 3 to 5 years of experience. If you fit these, then you're going to make it to like the actual interview. I just don't think that's the way this should be done anymore. I think it's like it's much more apparent to me that I mean, even just like the picking specific technologies thing, it's like it doesn't matter what technology you use. There's like a problem that you want solved, and you have to solve that. And if the person you want is going to pick the right technology for the job based on the job after you tell them about it, but you're not going to tell them the job until after you hire them. So why are you going to pick who you hire based on what technologies they can use, right?
Right.
So it's I think there's that problem, and in the Midwest, if we can overcome that,
Sure.
I think we'll be in a much better place.
And so, as far as kind of what you work on, where you're doing a lot of research, right? And you're doing a lot of research pertaining to how other people are implementing AI. Is that fair to say, or I guess go a little bit harder into what your specific research is and who it affects.
Yeah. So. So I mean, the company that I work for, Dropout Labs, we're specializing in privacy-preserving machine learning, which is this notion that you can do machine learning without invading people's privacy. That's like the short of it. I guess the better way to put that is that in order to have people benefit from all the innovations that AI is going to bring, maybe they don't need to give up control over their personal data. That's kind of our vision. That's what we hope for. And this isn't just consumers, but also corporations. They don't need to share their data necessarily to innovate in the space. Like there's a few different kind of examples of things that we're interested in providing. Ultimately, one is, so like moving companies to the cloud who don't want to because they're concerned about data privacy. For example, if they're doing machine learning, like so let's say you're a hospital, you have found this healthcare startup that has a really strong machine learning model, but because of your data regulations, you don't want to move your data in the cloud for them to do their machine learning service. So for the healthcare startup, they have to work with you and deploy their solution on premise,
Right.
which is for a startup, like that's a really long cycle, right? That's like really hard to do. And so there's like a disconnect between these medical startups who are putting out some really incredible AI and these hospitals who have the people who need to be able to utilize that service, but they can't because of that problem. So what we intend to do, for example, is to allow them basically to both move to the cloud without being concerned that by doing so they're exposing their data or even the model itself. And essentially you can encrypt the materials.
Yep.
So you can encrypt the data, encrypt the model, and send them in their encrypted form to the cloud, and then run the computation as you normally would, except in a privacy-preserving way, so that neither you nor them nor the cloud ever sees anything that they didn't actually provide to the service.
Yeah. So your data is still your data.
Yep. And my model's still my model.
Right. Yeah. And so this is a product offering then that you guys are offering them.
We're working towards.
Yeah. Who is your target audience? Anyone that needs to protect their data?
So the thing about this is like it's a really big market because everyone needs to protect their data, right?
Sure. Yeah.
There are some applications that are definitely more sensitive than others, like healthcare. Finance is another one that we think about a lot. I think we are definitely like kind of we have our eyes open for new use cases. There's a lot of, once you hear about this technology, there's a lot of people who think, wow, this could be really useful. But then when you get into the weeds, it's kind of, the technology is so early and the market is kind of unaware.
Okay.
So like they're unaware that this is possible, that this exists. So there's kind of things that they've done that kind of are based on the assumption that this isn't possible. And when you have to go and educate them, then eventually like the use cases will be uncovered because they're like, oh, we've been doing this
Wrong
for so long.
Yeah.
Right. But it takes a long time to get from, hey, this is out there, to, oh wow, actually we could speed up efficiency by whatever because we don't have to go through these legal kind of loopholes now because there's like cryptographic guarantees around the security of my data.
Sure, and I imagine that as you implement in healthcare, you also have to go through the HIPAA hoops of making sure that you're at least HIPAA compliant.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of HIPAA audits in my
in
my daily vernacular. So I'm at least aware of, even if you just have like a biometric scanner somewhere in your facility, watch out because that's gonna be your exception. But yeah, I mean that's a hurdle that you're kind of facing. I guess the point of that question though was your product isn't going to be stuck in a region. Going back to, so I'm affiliated with a program at Bounce Hub, which is an incubator in Akron. There's a couple startups. There was one startup that was involved that is no longer involved, and I don't remember the name of the startup. However, they had a AI network that monitored cattle ranches. And so they were just trying to stick into the not even really the Midwest, but like where all the cows are. I forgot what state it was. It might have been like Nebraska or something, where there's just these ridiculous cattle ranches and slaughter farms for cows, and they monitor the cows, and they have drones that fly over, and then it monitors the cows, and the AI sorts like, okay, these cows are doing this, that's doing that. It's a fascinating business model. I don't know how it's doing now. I hope they don't listen to this podcast, but don't steal their idea. They're pretty far along. They had it built, but it's interesting to me because I've seen a couple of those situations where their AI seems to be a very broad use case, like for everyone, and there are a couple people that are really just going into these weird niches where it's like, I only want to talk to marketers that are marketing to other marketers, or I only want to deal with cattle ranches, or it's stuff like that. So are you seeing more of a global approach to it, kind of like what you guys have?
Yeah, so this is like go-to-market, I think, right? This is kind of that notion. Everyone, I think the product kind of dictates how you go to market, so it depends. In AI, because it's so broadly kind of applicable and useful, and it's So like we aren't providing models, right? We're not providing like a service that an AI fuels. We're providing tools for AI developers, essentially.
Right.
Um, which is a different kind of play. You're,
Yep.
you're targeting a kind of highly specialized people who really know like their subject, but aren't always in, aware of the entire kind of life cycle or implications of what they're building. They're kind of focused on their research and like that. Similar with cryptography, because we kind of bridge those two fields.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not clear that like that what we're doing would work for kind of an AI services company, which is
Okay. Yeah.
we're going to provide this service and we're going to do so
Yeah.
better than everyone else because our differentiator is going to be AI or some
Right.
strong model that we've developed that is better.
But that's also a scary differentiator because AI can be replicated, right?
Yeah. So for a startup,
yeah, that's the thing that's fascinating to me because you kind of going back to what Bounce Hub is. It's a technology-based business incubator, and everyone has a proprietary software idea that once they release to the world can, one way or another, be replicated, or they're replicating something else. They just think they could do it better, which all power to them. I'm not saying that one thing's better than the other, but it's still kind of a scary place to position yourself in. At least from my perspective.
So yeah, we've actually kind of considered this as well. That so like I said, right, the data can be kept private, but also the model can be kept private.
Yes.
Which for a startup is actually a really interesting prospect because
Yeah.
if that's the core of their business model, that's their differentiator. They don't want to
Yeah.
give that up. They don't want to put it on premise where someone might be able to sneak it out or something, or at least like they don't want to give that to a hospital who could then replicate it or kind of co-op their service. So. Yeah, I think that there are like good concerns there. I'm not, I guess, too familiar with companies that have done that successfully. Like,
yeah, I know a lot of startups that are in like a very primordial stage. So, and that's really what I interface with. Typically, especially with the AI ones. I know a couple like of the past startups that have since either done something or done nothing. They've all been in a different flavor of technology. So, I'm just starting to really understand how people are using AI in a market strategy, right?
I think for startups, the successful ones really aren't differentiating themselves on the strength of their AI necessarily. I think they're applying some basic techniques for the first time in a particular industry or application, and then using that to learn like a ton about that application.
Yeah.
So for example, Uber, right?
Yep.
Uber's algorithms weren't like incredible when they started,
right?
But they really kind of started to dig deep into like what it means to have to optimize these logistics about cars kind of meeting all these people and basically optimizing the travel time and how do you price that and all this stuff. And I mean, whether they've been successful, like they're losing a bunch of money. So like that's a whole different discussion. But the point is they didn't really differentiate themselves on the model. It wasn't the best model out there for logistics. It was just one that was useful and practical and scalable.
Yeah.
And then they learned a bunch about the product or about the problem, and then started to add on incrementally from there. Yeah. And I think that's like a lot of the AI startups I see are like, we train this great model, it does this better than the state of the art, and we're going to take this to market. But they've focused so much on boosting the model performance that they've kind of not focused on the important part, which is the go-to-market and how this actually solves someone's problem and why someone's going to pay you thousands of dollars for you to do this for them. So.
That's why you kind of need somebody to build it, somebody to market it, and somebody to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, that's definitely fascinating. I guess what are your main concerns with machine learning in the next 5 years?
Security mostly.
Is it all security then?
Yeah, I think. So there's some people who think like very soon we're going to have AGI, super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
We need to make sure it's aligned. I think that's like an important problem in the long term because it's possible that someone's going to discover that and it's going to go wrong.
Sure.
But I'm not convinced that that'll happen that soon. So
yeah, I'm not in that camp, so that's why I'm not like, why is AI going to take over the world? I didn't ask that yet.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of really smart people working on that problem, and they have good justifications philosophically, I think, for doing so. I personally think that like a larger threat is things around heightened cyber attacks.
Yeah.
Like because right, if AI can amplify kind of already existing human behaviors, that's a human behavior that I think
Right.
that is out there that has a high impact and high risk of actually being executed.
There are pen testing tools that are being released
Yeah.
on a daily basis, and the thing that I find fascinating about specifically penetration testing tools are they are not like you could buy them on the internet real easy. Like you could just buy something to hack somebody's key fob. You could just buy somebody to buy something to brute force any WPA2 encryption. Right? You're not. All you need is time. That's all you need, and you don't even need to be technical with some of them. Because I mean, I'm a big fan of Hack5. I don't know if you're familiar. They have a series of gadgets, and they have a community that will just like walk you through hacking a hospital if you want to. Like they'll just it's not like you don't. They don't. You don't tell them, hey, I'm breaking into something. But like they're like, hey, I need to open up a bunch of spoof portals, and they're like, oh, do you want a Starbucks one? We already have that on GitHub. Here you go. And then all of a sudden, people are logging in with their credit cards on Starbucks.com, and you can't stop it. Like but it's so. It's funny because the community is so helpful. And the product has like these ridiculous implications that it's like, wow, I can't believe these things are really hitting out there. But Hack5 doesn't have this, but there are AI protocols that basically just hack faster, or they do it without the margin of error. Like a lot of times if you're breaking into something, you can forget to take out all the logs, or maybe you don't know where all the logs are. There's an AI protocol that cleans that up for you. And I was like, oh, that's like that takes away the fear of getting caught, right? Right. Yeah. So I think that's definitely a genuine fear. So I think that's interesting.
So I mean, I've recently become involved with a little bit of that community, I guess, like the DEF CON community.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
They have an AI village where people who are in that intersection are very prevalent, and we there's like a side channel we're all in and just kind of talk about this kind of stuff. It's not always, applying AI for cyber attacks or defenses. It's a lot of times it's the security of the machine learning models themselves.
Okay.
We don't really have good notions of security in current AI because it's so new. There's like a lot of problems with security. I think there's also like disinformation is a big one that people that's like pretty important right now, right? That people are talking more about, and I think there's going to be a lot of news around that. Coming up, I think, as we see kind of 2020, the election coming up, and more and more of kind of the political stuff going on, I think, like, no matter where you are politically, like this is an important problem. If they're going to disrupt, if bad actors are going to disrupt kind of political processes based on disinformation, AI could potentially allow them to scale up those disinformation attacks and do so much more in a much more targeted and effective way, which is bad for everyone. So that's one, and another one I think is kind of like feedback loops gone wrong in AI systems. So this is, I guess, the anecdote that I would point for this is YouTube has been known for this, where so in recommendation systems, there's this problem of like feedback loops that come up where, I guess you're watching a video and it recommends you some videos, and occasionally it'll recommend you one that's kind of like extreme, and you're like, oh, this is probably just based on kind of like natural shortcomings of any recommendation algorithm that doesn't have enough data, or isn't trained well enough, and this is going to just happen, right? Because they're not perfect. So you kind of you're watching your video, and maybe you're watching some music video, and then on the side here you say, oh, watch, just something really extreme, like some extremist group, like watch them, do something, and you're like, okay, and then you're like, naturally, it's like an extreme thing, it attracts your attention, you click on it, but then that click is like registered, right?
Right, and now that's in your algorithm.
Now they're learning that, like, even though you're watching this music video,
now you really like ISIS,
right? So then next time you watch this, maybe there's two videos. Right, one's ISIS and one is is anti-vaxxers or something.
Sure,
and then like you, as you're just going through YouTube, especially younger, right? When you're not aware of this, you're just gonna like end up being attracted to the most extreme examples, and then eventually your recommendations are just gonna be flooded with these extreme groups and their propaganda, essentially, right?
Yeah.
This is, I mean, when we talk about like ISIS converting people to their cause, like they're not doing all the work. Sometimes it's these algorithms that are helping them. So I think this is like a problem that the industry has been pretty slow to come to terms with. It's like a very hard technical problem, which is why. And it also just took a long time for people to realize that this is what was going on.
Happening, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting issue. Some people recently put out some interesting work around this, but I think it's like very new. And YouTube put out a big report about what they're doing to prevent this in the future, which like it was pretty well received in the sense that people are recognizing that they're concerned about this and they're working on it. And, this doesn't drive their bottom line.
Right.
This is more just like we recognize that our product is doing bad things and like that's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
So I think people in general, when they recognize there's a problem in this industry, are quick to fix it if they can. I don't think we're the greatest at recognizing the problem ahead of time.
Okay. So you need some predictive analytics on what the issues are going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I get it. That's funny. I guess I knew that the algorithm on YouTube was an issue, but I guess I also didn't look at it in that way. But my algorithm's pretty basic, so they figured out what I like pretty quickly. So I didn't get any of that. But yeah, I do know that is an issue. So
I think it's a big concern with kids, right? Kids are going on the internet.
Right. Well, they're also impressionable, more so than the average bear, rather. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm going to give you time to plug anything that you want to plug. Is there any parting thoughts you want to give on machine learning, AI?
Yeah. So I guess for Clevelanders who are probably watching this, I think we run the Cleveland AI group. It's kind of we're basically just a bunch of people in the community who are interested in this stuff, and we help each other in the sense that the people who are more familiar with this stuff will provide like kind of mentoring we do a study group around Fast AI, which is a free course that people can use to learn this stuff, to learn how to do it and actually implement it. And then we're doing that. We just finished up one, I guess in January or February.
Yep. Yeah.
And so we're going to hopefully be rebooting that pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that. We're also going to be doing AI social events, which is kind of for people who are interested, who've never done it, or people who are working on projects, maybe the people who went through those study groups, getting together every once in a while and just talking about what we're working on, and people helping each other out and saying, oh, have you tried this? That might fix this issue, things like that. We're hoping to do those bi-weekly, but we'll see how they go for the first ones. I think the first one should be in mid-April.
Okay.
I think.
That's coming up.
Yeah, mid to late April. Not exactly sure.
Okay.
But it should be right around the time that people are watching this.
So we lag on these videos a little bit, so that will be a good timing.
And then I'm also hoping to organize. So we also do kind of at this point they're like bi-monthly, like every other month. We do larger kind of lecture style events. I think you attended one of them.
I attended one of them. Ted Troxel, who's also on this podcast, spoke at one. So
So we usually get like people from the community who are working with this stuff to present on a topic they're interested in, and then I'm working on putting together kind of a hopefully a larger event, which is I'm going to try to get people who I've interacted with through research in like these different AI circles to kind of give a panel on AI. In Cleveland, or it'll probably be video conferenced, right? But these will be people who are working at like extremely well-known organizations, and they focus on this full time, and hopefully to get kind of a taste of what people are doing out there, more so than we have, because we're a little bit insulated in Cleveland for this stuff. Yeah,
for sure. I think Cleveland gives everyone a very different perspective on each technology they work on. So, all the cybersecurity guys that work in Cleveland do wacky things compared to the guys on the coast, and the guys that work on AI projects here are working on they have different perspectives, right? And that's for anything you're working on. Even if I imagine even as manufacturing, we have a different perspective.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So hopefully that'll happen. I'm not sure when, but I think I mean it's hard to coordinate people from Europe, the East Coast, and San Francisco to like all be on a conference call at the same time and give kind of a panel like this, but working on it. So,
sure. The other thing that I'm sure you want to plug is the Slack channel, Cleve Tech Spot.
Oh yeah. So we have a channel in the Cleveland Tech Slack workspace. So Cleveland Tech, there's a link out there. Maybe we can include it.
I'm gonna include links to everything in the comments. So.
Oh yeah. So yeah, then the meetup group and then Slack channel. If you go on the Slack channel, there's a channel called Deep Learning. That's where a lot of us hang out and drop these research papers that you alluded to.
Yeah. There's a wealth of information for somebody that has a dearth of knowledge like that. But yeah, no. So I mean, it's a really really great community. Like I said, I'll definitely have links up to that everywhere that we have videos for these pertaining topics. Even if somebody's not necessarily in that, if we're talking about AI, I'll always recommend you jump on to the conversation. So
cool. Thanks,
yeah, for sure. Anything else?
No.
All right. Well, thanks guys. Appreciate it.